President Trump released photos showing himself and other senior leaders watching as the military operation was happening in Venezuela. He was in Mar-a-Lago at the time, of course. Trump posted the photo to his Truth Social account. The president sitting alongside Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe. It was, of course, an extraordinary operation carried out by U.S. forces, but one that leaves questions open about what happens next. Let's bring in North Carolina Republican Congressman Pat Harrigan. Congressman, great to see you, and thank you for your service, sir. As a former member of U.S. Army Special Forces, I imagine you are pretty proud tonight of what your colleagues have done.
Well, Jonathan, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you, and there's absolutely no question about it. I mean, this was an unprecedented military operation, and I just invite everybody to compare today to the fall of Afghanistan 4 years ago. What a difference one administration makes, one holding back our military and the other allowing it to actually move forward. I cannot overstate how much of a chilling effect that this is going to have on our adversaries. This is achieving peace through strength. My hat is off to our military service members, particularly our special operators and our special aviators that conducted such a bold operation last night.
Yeah, and as we watch a video of the choppers that brought Nicolas Maduro to New York City earlier this evening, Congressman, I wonder what you think about the questions over what comes next. A bad man, a bad leader, an illegitimate leader in the eyes of so much of the world. An indicted criminal is now out of office, effectively, in Venezuela. But what happens next there?
What happens next is absolutely the most important question that needs to get answered. I think that there's broad agreement that we've got an indicted man here. He ran a narco-terrorist dictatorship that fundamentally collapsed the nation of Venezuela. He trafficked drugs that killed Americans, and he invited hostile powers into our hemisphere. This created all sorts of problems for us, to include mass illegal migration, and that foreign power influence in our hemisphere I also don't think can be overstated. But when you break something, you buy it. And we've got to lay out the plan for everybody to understand what comes next. I have a lot of trust in President Trump and his administration, the people that he's got at the helm. But what was an unbelievably successful operation in the early hours of this morning needs to stay that way. And we've got to make sure that that happens.
Do you think it might have sounded a little better in the eyes of many, Congressman, if the president had perhaps put the word help in front of run in terms of what we're going to do in Venezuela?
Yeah, I think that the specific words earlier today during the press conference of run the country gave a lot of people pause, particularly folks like me that are veterans of the global war on terror that saw regime change and color operation after color operation fail, right? We don't want to entangle ourselves into endless wars. That's not what we want. But I think that there is a big difference between what the president intended, which means when he says he's going to run the country, he's going to dictate the terms moving forward. He's going to make sure that those terms are America first. But that is a big difference between physically running the country, and I think the administration needs to make that clarification.
There are those, Congressman, who inevitably will say, if you are, to use your phrase, dictating the terms, you are essentially installing a puppet government. How important is it that the president now and the U.S. administration make it clear that it will be, as the UK Prime Minister said, the will of the Venezuelan people that is most important here?
Well, I want to be really clear, Jonathan, that the Maduro government was a puppet government. It just was a puppet government of our adversaries, China and Russia and Iran.
That's a very good point.
He was not a duly elected leader of the country. He was not recognized by most Western nations. We understand that he completely, fabricated the results of the last election that happened. And so I think we've just got to understand that, look, what happened, what Venezuela used to be, is what it should be once again, which is a thriving democracy, one that has significant oil exports and one that is friendly to those in its hemisphere, not foreign hostile powers from outside of our hemisphere. I think that we can make that happen, but I think we need to do it without having boots on the ground, and we need to do it expeditiously.
And Congressman, we know from the opposition leader, Maria Machado, who has said quite plainly that Iran is interfering in Venezuela, or has been interfering. Russia has been interfering. Cuba may be interfering. How do we get those bad actors out of there?
Well, look, this is one of the reasons why Venezuela is actually so strategically important to the United States, is that our foreign adversaries, those three nations that you talked about, have hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in that country. And right now, if I'm them, what I'm doing is I'm planning the world's greatest and fastest unconventional warfare campaign to destabilize this country as quickly as possible, because that hurts the United States. We need to make sure that that's not allowed to happen. I think President Trump is actually making a wise move by dictating the terms, leaving the existing government in place. That's not an entirety of a regime change, right? And I think that gives Venezuela the best foot forward as long as they are willing to approach the United States with the respect that it deserves, given its historical investments that have been taken away from it in Venezuela, and as well as the greatest power across the globe, let alone the hemisphere that Venezuela finds itself in.
Congressman Pat Harrigan, it has been an honor and an education to talk to you tonight, sir. And once again, thank you for your service to this great country.
Hey, Jonathan, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.